says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you lusting is the one you're loving?
By the time we get to the debate in 3 weeks, we'll probably be out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions. Out on bail, Becky, in Florida, probably in Washington, D.C., probably in Georgia, and already here in New York. I don't understand how we can't be talking about that and how we can't say to Republican voters, if you don't want a Democratic president again in 2025, why do you think independent voters in a general election will vote for someone who is out on bail and probably during the general election facing at least 1, probably 2 trials, which could subject him to prison time? I mean, so, Nikki Haley can call that whatever she likes. I'm a former prosecutor. I know what he's facing. He goes to trial on that documents case in May, and he's convicted. There is a presumption of jail time. Presumption. So, if that's telling too much of truth to make someone like her uncomfortable, then she probably doesn't belong in this business.
Oh, he's a problem. As somebody that watched him get elected twice in my state, like, how? What is happening? Dan McGreevey, as somebody that watched this man's a problem. I'm just saying, if you want Biden to win, Chris Christie is not somebody to ignore. It's the Karen Hunter Show. Welcome back. Hi. I've been here before. I don't know what you think, Don. Don Calloway is here. So is Omi Bell, the Omi Show right here on 126 Sundays at noon. Don Calloway, what are the streets saying in the lobby land?
I don't know what the street's saying, but I'm saying Chris Christie can miss me, because let's be clear. Donald Trump electorally is the Republican nominee as of today. And I don't see what alters that between now and September, October of 2024, when the nomination is set. And, I was reading something this past week, and I was just doing some history. And the reason we don't have universal health care in this country is because we didn't want black people to get it. So Franklin D. Roosevelt and his cousin Teddy Roosevelt before him, and what was the president? Last name started with A. Eisenhower. After them, proposed universal health care and expanding Medicaid to be universal. The reason we didn't do it is because the public zeitgeist at the time, and what remains now, is we didn't want black people to get it, right? When you think about Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, there was no private pool company. You cannot find a private pool company to serve individual home pools that existed prior to 1955. That is because the private pool industry is a response to folks of means creating pools because they did not want to exist in integrated pools, right? And so it is easy for somebody like Chris Christie or somebody of his ilk to claim to be the moderate Republican. But let's be honest about this. The baseline Republican Party is based upon wanting to deny public benefits to a broad spectrum of all Americans, particularly in a universe in which this country is browning and youngering and gayering, right? And so your party affiliation tells me where you want resources to go to. But you claiming to be a moderate and sensible Republican tells me that your differential proposition is, I'm willing to say things in a nicer way than Donald Trump. And to me, that's not sufficient. So I'm not a guy who's going to give Chris Christie a whole lot of props. Or I'm not a guy who's going to give somebody like Tim Scott or Nikki Haley a whole bunch of props, because your fundamental governing proposition is still based in the idea of, I don't want black folks to have X, Y, and Z. Donald Trump's defining proposition is that he's willing to say the ugly stuff out loud, right? So he's winning because he's at least willing to tether himself to the notion of being willing to say these extraordinarily racist and ugly things out loud, whereas the rest of the Republican Party they believe them, but they don't want to tweak them, right? So Chris Christie is not offering a fundamentally different governing proposition.
I'm not saying, let me just
He
be
can't
very
beat Donald
clear.
Trump.
Karen Hunter will not vote for Chris Christie for president.
Right.
And I don't expect anybody in this room. What I'm saying is we have to pay attention that most people are not watching politics the way you're watching politics, Don Calloway. Most people do not have the understanding of that the Republican Party, fundamentally, this Republican Party, which was once the Democratic Party, which was once the slaveholding party, is the same people, right, that switch parties, which is why I'm clear about the strategy around switching parties and making, the party do what it do. But most people don't even want to entertain that. When I brought it forth, like let's shake up the Republican Party. Let's all go in and mess up the primary. Nobody wanted to do that because they see themselves as in alignment with something that doesn't exist, right? So what you're saying is absolutely true. What I'm saying is for the rest of the people, nobody really wants to be a racist, right? So if I have an alternative that shields me from being an open racist in the form of a Chris Christie or Nikki Haley or Tim Scott, I'd rather do that because a vote for Trump is telling the world that I'm actually a racist. Now, once I go in that voting booth, I
think a lot of people really do want to be racist, and that's okay.
You do? Do they?
Since the only might have a
do y'all want to be racist?
Listen, this is what I think. Okay, I think that if we could zoom out, just a little bit. I think under all of this, in the spirit of capitalism, there is not a belief that everybody should have the same things, period. There's no belief that everybody should have the same things. And there's definitely not a belief that those who have more, that somebody who has less should have what they have, period. It's not there. It's not a thing in the U.S. Yes, it breaks down into marginalized communities and lots of different labels. But I think that since we were built, the idea that everybody's supposed to have the same thing is not real. So that was never a thing. I think that I was watching this. There's this influencer. I don't even know if she's an influencer, but it was this viral video that I saw where she was saying that she's like, look, let's keep it real. People don't necessarily want equality. People want the power to discriminate in the way that they've been discriminated against. People want the power to marginalize in the way that they've been marginalized, right? And so I think that this is interesting when you talk about, the different parties, because I believe that there's such extremism on both sides that there's barely anybody in the middle, to be honest. All right. And so when we try to have the let's talk about the fundamentals of this party or the fundamentals of that party, honestly, ain't nobody looking everybody's looking a little interesting. Let me say that. So but I think what Karen is saying, which I love, is that tends to make the Democratic Party be sleeping, they're sleep on other people because of their fundamental belief that nobody would do. People won't, they just can't, they won't go that far, will they? It's y'all, come on now. They've been going that far. They're going to keep going that far because there is no belief that everybody should have the same thing. There is a belief that in the spirit of capitalism, I'm supposed to have what I have, you have what you have, and you better work to get what I got, even if I got it from somebody else. Those belief systems are American beliefs. They're not even separated into party. They are American hardcore belief systems. And until we can, in my opinion, address these belief systems, not everybody should have everything. If I got more, if I worked harder, my idea of working hard, then I'm supposed to have more than you. So I don't know what you're talking about. That idea is so ingrained that it just keeps threading. And then we have labels for more labels and more, and then we don't end up anywhere. So
yeah,
I agree.
I think
Don't sleep.
That is a correct and substantive critique of capitalism. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this day with respect to the Greenwood stuff, and to several other businesses who've been caught doing what Greenwood Bank is doing, which is, hey, black capitalism will not save us, right? Because capitalism is inherently exploitative. And there are winners and losers in the capitalistic system. I am not a revolutionary because I am a capitalist. I am, however, not selling black affinity to participate in capitalism and exploit our people under false pretenses. So
wait a minute. You got to go back to that because you brought up Greenwood and you made that statement. That is huge because you're not talking about just Greenwood when you say that.
No, not at all. But we talked about Greenwood in the earlier segment. So I'm talking about Greenwood in the context of capitalism with black faces will not save us, right? Capitalism is fundamentally not a liberative activity because capitalism has people who are exploited. Liberative activity, particularly in the context of liberating Black folks, liberative activity leaves room for not exploiting anybody and a true egalitarian system, which I don't participate in because I'm a capitalist, right? And I'm still trying to find ways to get ahead. I'm still trying to find ways to accumulate wealth. Now we can debate what I'm trying to accumulate wealth to do, right? But when I accumulate wealth, there is still somebody who's losing, whether or not that's somebody I can see. It might be folks over in a sweatshop in Bangladesh, right? But ultimately, I think Greenwood is a good example, and that's perhaps unfair because you weren't participating in that earlier section. But Greenwood is a great example of how capitalism, which ultimately works to the benefit of primarily cisgender heterosexual men, even Black men, will not save Black people.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you love thing